Well, delighted to be joined by my first guest of the evening, which is Mr. Clive Whittingham from the excellent Loft for Words fan site on Queen's Park Rangers. Great to see you, Clive. Thanks so much for joining us. QPR, are we still in a place of working out where QPR are at? Because you've been very good at your best, you've been very poor at your worst. Still seeing things levelling out as a fan base, I suppose?
I've enjoyed the last 4 games more than I enjoyed the first 4 games, certainly. I think there was a few things going on at the start. Obviously, the transfer window closing like a month into the season really, it doesn't do a lot of clubs a lot of good, but it certainly seems to really hobble QPR, I guess, because we're sort of one of the last dogs at the bowl, I guess. So it wasn't until the first week of September that we actually had our team set. If you look who we signed towards the end of the window, you've added Hayden, Saito, Norrington-Davies, Kone, all in the sort of last week of the window. So the team looked completely different. I don't think our pre-season was up to scratch. I think, we weren't physically where we needed to be in a few of the early games. And also, we've started off playing this game model, which was possession-based and lots of passing around in our own penalty area, lots of short goal kick routines, lots of long build-up. And I don't think we've got the players to do it. Stefan, in his interview with us, said he doesn't think we've got the players to do it. And I also think that football's moved on from that now. Even Guardiola has got rid of his ball-playing goalkeeper and is much more direct. It's much more physicality, width, pace, counter-attacks in football now. You look how Russell Martin is struggling at Rangers with all the advantages they have. I just think football's moved on a little bit, and it took a 7-1 at Coventry to make us realise, but perhaps losing the way we did, because you could have shrugged off a 3 or a 4-1 at Coventry, but getting done 7-1, I think has sort of woken them up to themselves a little bit, and we've played completely different style since Coventry and look much more comfortable in it.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that's really stood out more than anything else is obviously a lot of attacking recruitment that came in over the summer, and obviously taking its time to settle into how the sort of club started to come together and how that's sort of building into the season so far. But talk to me a little bit about Burrell and that sort of the addition of just pure unadulterated pace and how much of a difference that makes when you're trying to turn these games, and obviously the role that he can play in terms of turning that sort of defence into attack so quickly. Yeah, and how much I suppose that feeds into that change of system that you were just talking about there.
Yeah, he looks really, really promising. Given that he was playing for Cove Rangers 18 months ago and Burton Albion last year, he looks a really promising signing. QPR have struggled for 10 years with strikers, right? Our strikers have been terrible since we came back into this division.
Since Charlie Austin, I suppose.
Yeah, the closest we came to replacing Charlie Austin was bringing Charlie Austin back a second time. We've had sort of Connor Washington, and we've had some quite good loans like Naki Wells, but they're only on loan, so they go back. We've just really struggled for strikers for 10 years, and now it feels like 2 have come along at once, because I was absolutely amazed that we were the ones that got Kone out of Wickham. I don't know how that's happened or why that's happened, really, because there was talk of Luton and other clubs bidding 6-7 million for him, and then he turns up at QPR for 3. And yeah, so I don't really understand that, but I'm very glad it has happened. And the other thing we've struggled for the last couple of years is, since Brighter Say Samuel left, really, is we've been a really, really slow team. So they have learned lessons from last summer's recruitment, and they've tried to put some pace and athleticism and power into the team. Burrell is one, and Benge is another. Mad as a bag of bees, but quick. And Poku as well, although he's been hamstrung so far. But they did learn lessons, and the recruitment's been way better this summer, I think. And the 2 strikers just make such a difference. Having said all of that, they were both ineffective at Sheffield Wednesday on Saturday, but we always struggle with Sheffield Wednesday. Bloody Barry Bannon FC, for some reason, just do not suit us at all. And they played Burrell quite well on Saturday. They sat really, really deep, so he didn't have that space to run into behind, which was the opposite of what Connor Cody did the other week at Wrexham when we had a lovely afternoon there. So they were both pretty ineffective at the weekend, but miles and miles ahead of strikers we've had at QPR for ages. So fair play to the club for getting that recruitment right.
I want to come to the goal you conceded at Sheffield Wednesday, which was again, and you said it as soon as Paul Nardi came in. One of you, I think it was either you or one of the researchers at Loft for Words, said he can't dominate his box, and it's and it does make me wonder about the combination. I think Paul Nardi's a really good shot stopper. I think Liam Morrison and Amadou and Bengay are very talented defenders. So in isolation, these are all good players. But when it comes to balls into the box, I do wonder whether you need Steve Cook in there, just an organizer, just someone who can dominate the penalty area and bring that bit of experience and not so much physicality, because I think Bengay is very physical, but just that that bit of know-how in those key moments, I think.
Goalkeeper's definitely the problem spot at the moment. I mean, when we did our season preview, I told you that they'd start Joe Walsh this year.
Yes.
And everyone was there. Nah, where's he got that from? But like, we'd been told at the start of the summer that Joe Walsh was going to be starting. That was, as I said in that preview, like the goalkeeping spot's not really a spot to mess about with. You've got Nardi there, who's had a full season of championship experience. Maybe just start the season with him, hopefully get some points on the board and get in mid-table. And if you want to bring Joe Walsh in, and make him your first choice, then sort of do that steadily through the second half of the season. Just chucking a guy in who's only ever started 2 league games in his life and making him your first choice and just being like that, teaching someone to swim by chucking them in the harbour and leaving them to it, like, good luck, guys. And obviously he had a torrid time with it at the start, being asked to play out, as we've discussed, like, doesn't suit us and doesn't suit football now. So he had that on his plate as well. Then the Coventry game happened and you just thought, poor Joe, so he's broken his wrist in training. So you're now in a situation where Paul Nardi, who basically came back in the summer as first choice and was told immediately, surplus to requirements, mate, find a new club. You're now saying, oh, Paul, sorry, can you be the first choice again? And we've had to get Ben Hamer in to come and sit on the bench. So it's a bit chaotic back there, and the results are there on the pitch, right? It's been our weak spot. Dreadful goalkeeping error on Saturday. I mean, we've said, like, trying to get Nardi to come off his line for anything, you'd have to set that guy on fire. And then on Saturday, I think you saw why he stays on his line all the time. I think after that, I think I'd rather him stay on his line. So yeah, it is a weak spot. We've messed around with it a bit needlessly, and I think both the players we've got there are sort of low on confidence and short of sharpness. And yeah, Nardi had weaknesses anyway, commanding his penalty area. I don't know if Steve Cook is the answer. I mean, Liam Morrison is quite commanding. I mean, we'll find out, I guess, in the next game or two, because Mbenge, shock horror, is already only 1 yellow card away from a ban. So we'll be needing another centre-back. Jake Clark-Salter is allegedly nearly fit again, although that feels like more of a sort of myth and an ideal than a real.
He's fit for his 10 to 15 games, is
he? Yeah, it'll be nice to see him again for 20 minutes. But so there'll be a change at centre-back shortly, because there's no way Mbenge is getting through this week without another yellow card. So we'll either find out on Saturday or the game after that, I guess.
Ollie, I wanted to ask you about Reece Norrington-Davies, who started for a left-back for QPR last time out at Sheffield Wednesday. Were you, dare I say, slightly surprised that another Championship club had taken Norrington-Davies, and were you expecting him more to get League One offers rather than Championship?
I was, yeah. He'd had a really difficult time of it with United. He's been really struggling in terms of the way that he'd come through at the club. He looked really impressive probably 5 years ago now, when he was first breaking into the team. I think it was 21-22 when he came through under Paul Heckingbottom, where he was playing left centre-back of a 3. And actually, the role really seemed to suit him. It took advantage of his athleticism in terms of the pace that he uses. He was able to get forward into that kind of unique role that United like to have for their sort of wide centre-halves. And so he really did look like he could be a really good player. Unfortunately, he then had probably 4 back-to-back really, really bad injuries, really difficult ones that put him out for sort of 6 to 9 months at a time. Every time he came back, he'd play 90 minutes and then be out for another 6 to 9 months. And it was just a really torrid time for him. But having seen him the back end of, a little bit last season, seeing him in pre-season where he was playing for United at centre-back, and then seeing him the first game of the season, I thought those injuries had taken a huge toll on Norrington-Davies. He looked a player completely out of his depth at Championship level. He looked like somebody who was jeered off when he was subbed off on the opening day. United just had no future for him. I think part of that is that we were playing him at centre-half in a back four, and that is just hanging the lad out to dry because it's not his position. But I was very shocked he ended up in the Championship, and not just in the Championship, really. I was shocked he ended up starting for somebody in the Championship in terms of where he would drop to. But by all accounts, and obviously, Clive, you can come in and update this one for us, but by all accounts, has really taken it to like a duck to water. He's back in his natural position, playing left back, which I think would be really good for him in terms of rebuilding that confidence of him as a player, hopefully rebuilding that confidence in his body. And as much as it didn't work for him at United, and we did end up getting, it probably got a bit toxic for him at Bramall Lane, it really would be great to see him go the rest of his career, no big injuries, and really see what kind of a player he can become. But yeah, it sounds like a really good start at the very least, doesn't it?
I had him as our best player on Saturday. He's coal-fired left back, isn't he? I mean, what we started, we tried to go into this season with Ziad Larkesh as our starting left back, which at the time we said that is a huge risk for someone that's never played at this level, never really looked like he is at this level, and has one half decent season playing for Dundee, and he's going to be your starting left back. That was a huge risk. And look, it's terrible what happened to him doing his ACL in pre-season. But for the team, it might have saved us a problem there. And they've had to just go out and get a Championship left back on our budget at the last minute. And like you say, it probably turned a little bit toxic for him at Sheffield United. He needs a fresh start. So it probably suits all parties. He's fine at the moment. Like, hopefully he stays fit and just sort of chugs through 40 games, because that's all we need from him, really. He's been fine. He's not tearing up any trees or anything, but equally we're not getting exposed down that side. Mm-hmm. He's got a little bit of experience in what is now, I think, the youngest team in the Championship average age. So yeah, a steady enough addition, I guess.
Central midfield then, Clive. I feel Isaac Hayden is going to be really valuable for you, because I think he can be a steadying presence in midfield. And again, a little bit like what I've spoken about with the centre halves. I just wonder about whether Madsen and Varane, whether you'd like to have that balance of youth and experience there, because I like Varane. I think he showed a lot of potential last season.
Varane's, they're sort of lining him up as, fattening the pig for market. That might be a player that we can get some money for. So Varane, if Varane's fit and available, he'll be playing. Madsen alongside him just completely divides opinion. Some people think he's great. Some people think he's the worst player that we've ever had. The truth is probably somewhere in between. He really struggled with the physicality of the Championship last year, despite the fact that he's 6'4". I mean, he is the smallest, weakest 6'4" footballer you'll ever see in your life. But he does seem to have got to grips a little bit with that side of the game, and that is allowing him to show what he does have, which is quite a creative forward passing game. We've always said, like, if you don't play three men in midfield at QPR, we just get overrun and outnumbered and overawed, which did happen at the start of the season, and particularly at Coventry. That result, again, like I say, I think it wised us up to ourselves, and we could have signed Isaac Hayden at any point over the summer. He's made it really, really clear he wanted to come to QPR. I don't know whether it was length of contract or wages or whatever that was holding us back from doing it, but literally the day after the Coventry game, they just pushed the button on that, having ummed and ahed about it all summer. I really like Isaac Hayden. Like, we're trying to get the average age of the squad down. We're trying to build up prospects to sell, development prospects, to get some cash flow going through, to sort of trade our way up the league. And I completely get it. And in that environment, you don't really want 30-something-year-olds hanging around on 3-year contract. But it's a tough league. You've got to be competitive within it. You do need some game smarts and some experience there. We've lost a lot of that experience, particularly with Steve Cook sort of sliding out of the team. People like Jack Colback have gone, Morgan Fox. So I think that was a nice, pragmatic, albeit belated, but a much-needed sort of pragmatic move. He's not going to play every game, but situations like Saturday, where we had a really bad first half and Bannon was bossing us around, you bring him on at halftime to regain control of the midfield. I really like Hayden. I would have signed him after he was on loan with us before, and I'm pleased that he's back.
It's an interesting debate, isn't it, Ollie? That sort of developing youth versus for long-term financial purposes versus short-term we need some experience kind of thing, because as much as I would always lean towards having something of a balance where you have one or two experienced heads, I do kind of understand the argument for youth development, because I think, you know, QPR, Christian Nerthy would probably argue that you look at Sunderland, where they were criticised for parts of Christian Speakman's reign as technical director there, for maybe being too imbalanced in favour of youth and not having the experience. And, you know, one or two seasons that might have been true, but in the end, because of the development that they invested in these prodigiously talented young players, they ended up having the season that they had last season and currently doing in the Premier League. So is there an argument for leaning a bit more on the youth development foot, which QPR are doing, as opposed to looking more to the short-term side of things?
I think absolutely. And I think it's definitely the right way to go about building a sustainable championship club. If you're a club who doesn't have parachute payments, you've got to look at different ways of being competitive and different ways of developing your way through the league. And such a huge part of that is player trading. If you can bring in relatively cheap young stars who you can turn huge profits on, that really can develop you as a club. You know, for QPR, it's something they did so effectively previously with players like Eza and other players who have been there and sort of really brought in that funding that's helped the club to grow. And I think it's definitely the right way to go. For me, though, I would still lean towards that balance. I look at my own club, which obviously I'm always loath to do, unfortunately. Wish I could avoid them sometimes, but no, I'll lean on them today. But obviously this summer we did something very similar, where we decided, no, you know what we're going to do is we're going to invest heavily into young players. We're going to bring in young. Everybody has to fit this Moneyball criteria, which is how we're going to develop. If you get that slightly wrong, it can turn into a disaster very quickly. The experienced heads are really needed to help your young stars develop. Even at Sunderland, when, you know, for them to make this final big jump, they had to go out there and bring in some of those more experienced heads to really bring them along. Players, even if they're not 30, 35, they were still players like Chris Mepham, like Enzo Lefebvre, like Alan Brown coming into the club, who were leaders, who really developed not just the club's ethos and sort of gave them a leadership on the pitch. It's leadership off the pitch for these players to help them develop and help them turn into the professionals that they can be as well. And I think it's such an important part of player development that sometimes gets overlooked. If you have a model professional, an Isaac Hayden, a Steve Corker, whoever it is, they can help these young players to maybe learn the tricks of the game that really helps them turn into the players that Sunderland are now reaping the benefits from. And I think it's a really important part that while you should put that focus into youth development to help the club develop, you've got to have that balance right. So you've got that experience there to help those youngsters and sometimes just settle you on the pitch.
You took the name right out of my mouth there, Ollie. It was no surprise to me that Sunderland went from where they were to where they ended up last year after signing Alan Brown. It's like I think, what did Alan Brown? He maybe started a dozen games last year and came off the bench in another 9 or 10 or something like that. That's what Hayden's going to do for us. Not everybody can be a development prospect. You can't pick a team of teenagers, particularly when you're QPR in this league playing against Southampton, Ipswich, and all of this lot. Like, not everybody can be a development prospect. It's a tough league. You've got to compete. I think it's another thing. Like I say, I would never want to go through that Coventry away game or that Coventry weekend ever again in my life, but it could turn out to be the best thing that's happened to us, because it just has applied a bit of pragmatism and a bit of balance to our team and our outlook and the way we're going about it. So maybe it was worth it.
Koki Saito, one of the players you're investing in, Clive. How's he getting on? We mentioned Reece Norrington-Davies there. Some good link-up player we're seeing between those two.
Loving him, yeah, it's absolutely. But I at the time, again, that's happened straight after Coventry, and I'm not sure that is where I would spend £2.8 million on this team at the moment. Another tiny 10, because, you know, we've got a lot of tiny 10s. But like, I enjoyed Saito last year, and his goals, he only got 3 goals last year, but they were all towards the end of the season, which I think he didn't score in his first 17 home games, and now he's scored in 3 of the last 5 games at Loftus Road or something like that. So that told me he was, again, like getting up to the speed of the division. It would have been a shame to do all that development work on him and then somebody else reaps the benefits of that. So he's come in. He looks really good, and Burrell looks really good, and Kone looks really good. These are all players that did their pre-season somewhere else, which comes back to my point about whatever happened at QPR over the summer. I really think they got the pre-season wrong, and they need to look at that for next year, because our best players in these early games have all been players that did their pre-season with another club. But that aside, it's looked really good. One is the game against Charlton. Sheff Wednesday played him well at the weekend. I know there's a lot of chat about Sheff Wednesday. Like, I think with what he's got to work with there, Pedersen.
Yeah,
I was impressed with them at the weekend. Like, just working with absolutely nothing in a dreadful situation. I thought they were tactically well set up. They were better than us in the first half. Thoroughly deserved their point. Obviously won at Portsmouth last week. So, you know, they'd obviously seen tape and nullified Saito and nullified Burrell really well. But overall, he's looked great. And like I say, having done that development work with him last year, it would have been a real shame for somebody else to benefit from that this year. And he's great fun, isn't he? Like, he's just fantastic character. Fans love him. You know, nice to have players like that around.
Absolutely. And then a couple more questions just to finish off before we bring in Dan Finch from Charlton. Firstly, what do you make of Julian Stefan so far? And are you encouraged by what you've seen in the last 4 games, that things are moving in the right direction?
The thing that I like about him most is he doesn't mess about, and he doesn't stick with things that aren't working.
A bit like Cifuentes in that sense.
But Cifuentes, like, and you know, chairman of the Marty Cifuentes fan club, obviously, but like we won 2 of our first 17 games last year, and it took until the end of October, start of November for us to go, right, look, this isn't working. No more possession-based football, 3-man midfield, mid block, low defense. You know, we're gonna do it this way, and then we started getting results. Stefan played, you know, again, possession-based, play out from the back for the first 4 games. We got our arse handed to us. After Coventry, he's just clicked his fingers. Within a week, the style against Charlton was just completely different. Like, just a completely different team. We're going to go up to Kone. We're going to go quick with Burrell in behind defences, less possession, more counter-attacking, more pace, more direct. And he did that within a week. And just, he like watched our team for 4 games, just went, nah, that's not working, and changed it. He hasn't been sort of dogmatic and stuck with it. And Cifuentes, I always said, was the ultimate pragmatist at QPR. He changed his style 3 or 4 times while he was here to suit the players he had. But even he spent 3 or 4 months at the start of last season playing a way that hasn't worked. So I like that about him. And you saw it again on Saturday. We didn't play well in the first half at Sheff Wednesday. 1-0 down, could have been 2-0 down. 3 substitutions at halftime straight away. Not, you know, managers sometimes give it 10 minutes at the start of the second half, which, in my opinion, more often than not, just burns off 10 minutes you don't have. What Stefan just went at 3 substitutions, that wasn't good enough. And within like 10 minutes of the start of the second half, we'd equalised and should have gone in front. So I like that he's proactive and doesn't mess about and doesn't sort of get bogged down in the ideal. Like, if that's not working, fine, let's move on and do something else. So yeah, I've quite liked what I've seen and heard of him so far.
Been a while since you've had a top half finish, it feels like. Do you reckon you've got a shot at that?
I'm not going to commit to that, am I? No, because like, literally a month ago we were losing 7-1. So let's, you know, and we were poor at Sheffield Wednesday on Saturday. Let's make no bones about it. So we beat 2 newly promoted teams, played really well at Wrexham, to be fair, although they've had a bit of a ropey start. We beat Charlton 3-1 at home, which was a good result. But for a lot of that second half, Charlton were well on top. And that game looked like it was going to go 2-2 more than 3-1, to be honest. Stoke was the best performance of the season, the most complete performance. That should have been more than 1-0. And then we were poor again at Sheffield Wednesday. So look, I think we've recruited way better than we did the previous season. We've got 2 strikers now, which just makes a hell of a difference and gives you a chance. We've improved the sort of physicality and the pace of the team, but we've made loads of signings again. It'll take time to bed in with a new manager. There's, you know, the performances are going to go like this. Let's see what we do this week. Like, we messed up a bit at Sheff Wednesday on Saturday. We got Oxford on Wednesday. You know, you would think that should be another victory. If it's not, then, you know, all this talk of top half finishing, whatever, that's going to subside again, isn't it? So let's just see what we've got and try and improve. What have we finished the last couple of years? 18th and then 15th. Let's just see if we can put another few positions on that and just try and be a sort of sane, steady football club for a while without like just being all QPR about it. So yeah, it's never as good as you think and never as bad as you think at QPR. So like, let's just steady down with talks of top half and playoff push and things like that.
Absolutely. Clive, thanks so much for talking to us, and keep up the great work on Loft for Words.
Nice to see you, boys. Always a pleasure.
Legend.
Cheers, Clive.
Cheers.